Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, June 15th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and as San Diego County moves deeper into the reopening stages, public health officers are keeping close watch on the number of coronavirus cases. Today, the county reported one more person has died from the virus and 170 new positive tests. This week, more businesses are getting ready to reopen as parts of the country are seeing a surge. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more.
If the numbers go up, hospitalizations go up, the question is, can we absorb that?
Governor Newsom says so far California's COVID-19 data continues to trend in the right direction.
What you could see on this slide is a significant decline.
You want any ranch or ketchup?
Statewide, many restaurants have been open for dining in for 3+ weeks. Also, thousands of people have been protesting over police brutality. Officials are expecting a surge in cases, but haven't seen it yet.
A lot of folks were out and about on Memorial Day, and you can see, again, the trend line remains remarkably stable.
With more testing, the number of cases statewide has increased, but the rate of positives has been decreasing, and hospitalization rates are also remaining stable. But the state is particularly concerned about COVID-19 in a dozen counties.
These are 13 counties. For one reason or another, we have a little bit of concern about the data.
One of those counties is neighboring Imperial County, which is seeing a surge in cases. State data shows Imperial has no ICU beds available and a positive testing rate of 27%. That's compared to about 4% statewide.
We require attestations. What's an attestation? It's a requirement that they make public the available resources. If Imperial County today asked for attestation, they would not meet the requirements of the state.
The County of San Diego has been moving at the same pace with the state in terms of reopening. This week, personal care businesses like tattoo shops, nail salons, and massage therapists are all getting the green light.
The fact that these businesses can open shop doesn't mean that we can let our guard down.
The weekend was the first time some bars have been open in months, and in some areas of downtown Friday, like in the Gaslamp area, groups of people were congregating outside bars, not wearing face coverings.
Supervisor Cox spoke with the mayor, and the streets were opened up so that businesses could extend into the streets. I think that businesses and restaurants specifically should know that we cannot accommodate the same number of individuals pre-COVID-19.
One of the metrics that could bring COVID restrictions back is outbreaks in community settings. That's like restaurants. Last week we had 4 of these outbreaks, and if we have 7 in a week, it could trigger restrictions.
Certainly possible if people don't cooperate with the best practices that have been recommended, but we're hoping that we get the cooperation from the public.
With no vaccine yet, officials are pleading with residents to follow mandates to cover faces while in public and follow physical distancing mandates. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The U.S. Supreme Court ruled today that existing civil rights law protects LGBTQ people from workplace discrimination. The 6-3 ruling allows employees to sue if they are fired, even in part because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Kara Desert is CEO of the San Diego LGBT Community Center, and she says it's important to note the ruling is based on laws passed in the 1960s to protect Black people and women from discrimination.
The LGBTQ community was able to use those laws that are precedent to say, and under these laws, we are also protected. So it's a huge victory for an intersectional community. It is again a victory for racial justice, for gender equality, and for LGBTQ rights everywhere.
California law has barred employment discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation since 1992. That was broadened to include gender identity in 2003. The Supreme Court decided not to hear a case challenging a California sanctuary law. For the past 2 years, it has successfully limited cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler has the story.
The 2017 bill limits when law enforcement can detain someone on immigration offenses and turn them over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This detainer practice by local law enforcement had been a major contributor to ICE's deportation efforts. In 2018, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions challenged the bill, which he said illegally stifled federal immigration enforcement. On Monday, the Supreme Court said a lower court's approval of the law could stand, ending debate about the bill's legality. Advocates have said that implementation of SB 54, while uneven in law enforcement across the state, has had a big impact.
I think for the most part, the improvement has been important. There's been a significant reduction across the state of California of the number of people that are deported because of turnovers.
But the Supreme Court still has not ruled on a Trump administration policy ending deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, which would leave 700,000 young people without legal status in the U.S. If that happened, California's sanctuary laws would be instrumental in providing the Dreamers some level of protection.
Legislation such as SB 54 and other related legislation that tries to minimize and separate local law enforcement from engaging in immigration authorities or working with immigration authorities provides some level of safeguards that prevent that collaboration and hopefully will minimize the threat level for DACA recipients.
A ruling on DACA is expected later this month. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Rayshard Brooks, his name now added to the growing list of people killed by police. As protests against police brutality continue around the world, President Trump plans to sign an executive order tomorrow on police reform. Nadia Romero has the latest.
As demonstrators around the world denounce police brutality and racial injustice, another black man died at the hands of police.
We are angry. When does it stop?
I just want y'all to know that y'all took my cousin from me. Y'all took the wrong person.
Police killed Rayshard Brooks after he took an Atlanta police officer's taser and pointed it at police as he ran away. An autopsy shows police shot Brooks in the back.
The trust that we have with the police force is broken.
To attempt to repair some of that trust, the Trump administration is preparing an executive order on policing.
President Trump's approach is working with the police in the communities to bring them together through community policing.
Aides say the administration is focusing on 4 key areas, including school choice, more money to minority communities, what the administration calls healthcare infrastructure in minority communities, and better police relations.
Invested in things like co-responders. Co-responders would allow for police to do their job, but bring in social workers and experts that deal with mental health.
The White House is using Camden, New Jersey as a guide. The city dissolved its police department in 2012 and replaced it with a new one that emphasizes community-oriented policing.
Can I get a high five, man?
Since then, violent crime has dropped 42%.
There's a better way to do policing.
But for this family,
true justice will never prevail because we will never be able to bring back Rayshard Brooks.
At the White House, I'm Nadia Romero.
Tonight at sunset, the San Diego County Administration building will be lit up in honor of George Floyd. The People's Alliance for Justice made the request for the lighting. The building will be illuminated in red and gold, the colors of Floyd's high school alma mater in Houston, Texas. A La Mesa protest against police brutality Sunday got off to a dramatic start with a show of support from San Diego bikers. KPBS reporter Amita Sharma was there.
At least 200 bikers from San Diego motorcycle clubs joined about 100 protesters in front of the La Mesa Police Department, some with raised fists in a show of solidarity. Slightly off motorcycle club president, who goes by the name Caveman, said he wants the police force to engage in some introspection about how officers treat people of color.
I'm not a big fan of police brutality. I think that there's no reason for it, and it's unfortunate that it's come to our communities or any community or anywhere. but they need to stand back and maybe look at themselves.
La Mesa Police Chief Walter Vasquez responded to that message with gratitude and a message of his own.
Thank you, but we need their input, and then change needs to occur. Especially from the police department, we all need to get better.
The protest remained peaceful, a sharp contrast to the events 2 weeks ago in downtown La Mesa. That weekend, the protest was peaceful throughout the day, but in the evening, the city was besieged by looting and vandalism. One biker rode away Sunday playing the James Brown song, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
A San Diego-based news outlet found itself targeted by protests this weekend.
There's no way you guys can be satisfied, okay? I won't be satisfied until you stop spreading lies or leave San Diego.
Now that's the CEO of One America News Network arguing with demonstrators. The group is upset with the cable news broadcaster over its claim that an elderly man injured by police in Buffalo is affiliated with Antifa.
Thing can come from San Diego, and all of us here are local San Diegans. We all work and live here, and we're all just here to say, stop. Don't do this in our backyard. Don't do this at all. But specifically, do not represent our city this way. It's horrible.
Saturday's protest was peaceful, and President Trump has often praised OAN for its conservative point of view. Now, supporters of President Trump were also busy this weekend. Dozens of boats paraded along San Diego Bay. People lined the waterfronts near the USS Midway and Seaport Village to cheer them on. Many of them waved U.S. and Trump campaign flags, and a man from Carlsbad organized the event. The Scripps Institution of Oceanography will host a major research initiative funded by the federal government. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the effort could fund more than $200 million worth of research over 5 years.
UC San Diego will host the Cooperative Institute for Marine, Earth, and Atmospheric Systems. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration funds 17 institutes like that around the country. This is the first in California. Craig McLean is the assistant administrator for research at NOAA.
Every major advance that we've made in ocean and atmospheric science through our laboratories has been done with the cooperative institutes. They're a vital component to our mission.
McLean says the Research Institute will help federal scientists understand the complicated interaction that affects the climate.
It's the California current, the West Coast rainfall, the abundance or lack of abundance of water in drought conditions. How would that affect the wildfire circumstances? So many of the problems that the West Coast community from California all the way to Washington are facing are subjects of study here with this cooperative institute.
McLean says interaction between the ocean and atmosphere have been studied for more than 50 years, and he says there is still much to understand. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
San Diego County officials got another rebuke from the courts today as an appeals court panel rejected the county's climate action plan. The 3-judge panel upheld a lower court ruling that threw out the plan because it did not adequately reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Climate Action Campaign Executive Director Nicole Kapritz hopes the decision will lead to a workable plan.
The county needs to kind of work with the community. You know, we're here ready to partner with the county and identify solutions and make sure that, yes, of course, we're going to continue to build new housing and grow as a community, but let's do it together and let's do it the right way.
Kapritz says the right way to build new housing in urban areas, not in far-flung sprawled developments. It's unclear whether the county will pursue a challenge of the appeals court decision. 7 cool zones across San Diego County are providing an escape from the heat. The air-conditioned cool zones are in the hottest areas of the county, and they are in Borrego Springs, Fallbrook, Lakeside, Potrero, Santa Isabel, Spring Valley, and Valley Center. All sites will be open from noon to 5 in the afternoon. That's Monday through Friday. And anyone entering a cool zone will have their temperature taken, And all visitors and staff must wear face coverings and also practice social distancing. But you may not need to use one of those cool zones just yet. We're actually in for a cool down this week. Jeff Cornish has your forecast.
Well, I hope your Monday has been a good one so far. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish, and we're glad that you're tuned in to us here on KPBS. We have some low clouds that will return tonight into early in the morning for the coastal areas, that typical June layer of marine clouds or maritime clouds. And there won't be many changes for the coast over the next few days, but there will be some changes inland. Some areas across the eastern part of the region, especially into the mountains, will be a bit cooler on Tuesday before a gradual warming trend in those interior areas later in the week. Tonight, though, we do expect to see those low clouds lurk once again late at night for the coastal areas. Will be around 71 late at night in Borrego Springs, but 46 into Campo, one of the cooler spots. El Cajon, 61, 64 to San Diego. Fire danger is still a big concern across the interior Southwest, so on a regional level, that is a big problem from Vegas east into the Four Corners region and even into the high plains of eastern Colorado. That's less of an issue for us as we do have a little bit more of an onshore breeze, which is less of a dry wind. We do have just a little hint of moisture in the atmosphere. Our forecast for Tuesday takes us back up to 102 in Borrego Springs, 72 in Mount Laguna, 73 into San Diego, and 74 to the north. Looking at the midweek forecast, still pretty decent weather out there for us. A little bit of a breeze, cool across the interior compared to what it could be. Now, those interior deserts will still be stifling, but not as hot as it could be this time of the year. We mentioned the lack of change for the coastal areas, and here we are, 74, 74, down to 72 on Thursday. Not much of a change. Low clouds every morning, sunshine in the afternoons. Inland areas, here you will see a little bit of a dip into Wednesday and Thursday, a little cooler before a slight increase in temperature into Saturday. Mountainous areas, here's a more decisive dip down into the upper 60s Wednesday and Thursday. And we begin that cooler process into Tuesday as well before a slight rebound into Friday and Saturday. Desert areas, still hot, but not as hot. Wednesday will be one of the cooler days in the stretch. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
La Mesa businesses that were damaged during rioting and looting can now apply to get financial help. The La Mesa Disaster Recovery Fund was created by the San Diego East County Chamber of Commerce Foundation. The fund raised $50,000 on its first day and has now reached nearly $200,000. To be eligible, businesses need to upload photos of the damage and include verification of their address. The money will be distributed through the end of July. Donations are still being accepted through a GoFundMe page. The finances of every city in San Diego County have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. But KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says as cities vote on their budgets this month, some are clearly hurting more than others.
Things have been quieter than usual lately at the National City Mile of Cars. It's one of the oldest car shopping districts in the country, but the pandemic has kept many would-be shoppers in their homes, and the cratering economy has led consumers to put off big-ticket purchases. All that is dealing a major blow to the National City budget.
I keep saying, how do we drive down the hill versus off the cliff?
Brad Ralston is the National City manager.
Off the cliff to me is hurting people, employees, dealing with layoffs and those sorts of things.
Instead of those drastic actions, Ralston wants to balance the budget for the next fiscal year with mostly short-term measures, things like deferring infrastructure projects and dipping into the city's reserves. National City was hit harder than most by the pandemic because it gets about 55% of its general fund revenues from sales tax, more than any other city in San Diego County. On top of the Mile of Cars,
you have one of the large regional malls in Plaza Bonita, Westfield Plaza Bonita, all of which, contribute to, the good and the bad of having a lot of sales tax. So the good, of course, is you need the revenues. The bad is when you have recessions, it tends to be more volatile than property tax and some of the other taxes that support local government.
The city budget is a balancing act.
Nick Romo is a legislative representative for the California League of Cities. He says cities face a collective loss of about $7 billion through summer 2021 because of the pandemic. Much of that is in sales tax revenues.
Different from the last recession, usually sales taxes are still can be a reliable source of revenue. But these are extraordinary times with the social distancing, the stay-at-home orders that have really prevented all of us from being able to at least go down to the corner store and purchase something. So that has been a unique point of this crisis.
The one source of revenue where cities are seeing stability or even growth is in property taxes. But Romo says California's Prop 13 significantly limits year-to-year growth in property tax revenue. This makes it tough for cities, even in good times, to find ways to pay for basic services like public safety, parks, and libraries.
If they're going to grow, if they're going to continue to serve residents, more and more residents at great, with great service, they've had to turn to other sources of revenue, including the sales taxes and other hotel taxes.
Hotel taxes are another big revenue source for San Diego cities, but they've also dried up over the past 4 months as tourism has come to a standstill. After the city of San Diego, the county's second biggest generator of hotel taxes is Carlsbad. Its hotels are suffering, but the city's valuable real estate and its relatively wealthy population have allowed Carlsbad to build up one of the most robust rainy day funds in the county, more than $100 million.
I do think that the city of Carlsbad's actually positioned likely better than most in the region.
Scott Chadwick is the Carlsbad city manager. He says the city took advantage of the healthy economy before the pandemic to pay down a sizable chunk of its pension debt.
I believe it was roughly $20 million that we paid down of our pension liability last year. And that was on top of a pay down of, I believe it was $11 million the year before. So we are aggressively trying to address our pension. And again, I feel that we've well positioned ourselves to be able to weather the storm.
But to the east, in Escondido, the budget situation was dire even before COVID-19. City Manager Jeff Epp says he's planning on asking voters for a 1-cent sales tax increase in the November election.
The difficulty is that our revenue situation just doesn't match up with the expenditures that are necessary to run a city of this size. And it really does need voter attention. We've been able to deal with it internally for several years, but we simply can't keep doing that. And we can't keep doing that, particularly now with the effects of the global pandemic.
Of course, tax hikes typically don't fare well on the ballot in times of economic hardship. And depending on how long the pandemic lasts and the speed of the economic recovery, 2020 could be just the start of cities' financial struggles. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
While gyms are starting to reopen, 4 24-hour fitness locations in San Diego County will stay closed for good. The fitness center chain filed for bankruptcy today as more customers choose in-home fitness alternatives, lower-cost gyms, or boutique studio classes. It is permanently closing hundreds of locations across the country, and that includes these in Chula Vista, La Jolla, San Marcos, and Vista. Other San Diego County locations will open on June 22nd with modifications. The FDA has pulled its approval for 2 drugs that were used to treat COVID-19. Hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine had been given emergency use authorization, but now the FDA's chief scientist says the latest studies show potential benefits do not outweigh the potential risks. The FDA also wants to make sure there's enough for people who actually need the medication, like those with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. As reopenings expand, many are wondering if it's safe. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani spoke to a researcher who found nearly 40% of people with coronavirus are asymptomatic, but that doesn't mean they aren't impacted by the disease.
Scientists know many people can get coronavirus but not show symptoms. What's still unclear is whether being asymptomatic is like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Scripps research cardiologist Eric Topol says just because people aren't showing symptoms, that doesn't mean the virus isn't affecting their internal organs.
You can have internal organ damage and not know it.
Topol looked at people who had been tested around the world and found anywhere from 30 to around 40% of coronavirus cases were asymptomatic. But when doctors looked at lung scans from those patients who didn't have any symptoms,
the majority of these people had very significant lung abnormalities.
Tobel says those people probably didn't get tested, so many more people are spreading the virus and not even knowing it.
Now, what explains why we only have 2 million people that have actually confirmed the diagnosis and well over 10 million people that must have had an infection?
Tobel says there needs to be more studies on how coronavirus affects our internal organs. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Supreme Court rules employers can no longer discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
An update now on our top story. As more businesses prepare to reopen this week, county health officials are urging everyone to keep up with physical distancing and wearing masks. Today, the county reported 1 more person has died from the coronavirus and 170 new cases. On Friday, tattoo shops, nail salons, and massage therapists can get back to work. One of the metrics that could force closures is outbreaks in community settings like restaurants. Last week, we had 4 outbreaks, but if we have 7 in a week, it could trigger restrictions to return. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.